pre-approved questions, so they already know what their questions are and they know what they're doing, but you can just call them.
Yeah, just say kids with questions, come on.
Okay.
But just say, make sure you say pre-approved because I'm not sure all of them knew that there are some.
Yeah. Can you say pre-approved?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
They were pre-approved questions.
So I say, anybody with a pre-approved question. You want to cut that off?
If you're going to Your mic's on. Okay. I'm going to leave the girls. Duane, they couldn't be any more prepared. I'll talk to you after since you have a mic on. Oh, her name is Willow. She's right in the front. Her name is Willow. She's right in the front. Come here so I can introduce you. She's great. Willow. Duane. She's going to be your volunteer.
Oh.
Yes, we need someone tall.
Yes.
So I was like, yes.
You're welcome to sit anywhere you like. We have this area reserved for all of your things, and if you'd like to sit here, you're welcome.
Okay.
And if you like, I can grab an extra.
No. You don't have to grab anything. I'll just scoot in one of these chairs. Okay. When you guys are ready, we're ready. So.
All right. Yes. Just waiting on that bus. Yes. Okay. Axel did walk in. Okay, so we have one more bus of students who's still on its way, so that'll be That's why we're not starting just yet.
Got it.
Yeah, we're running about, well, as of right now, 16 minutes late. So. Nice. Yeah. Love the weather.
In that case.
Okay. intro and then
Should we wait for him?
they're gonna. They've got it.
Just have to hit on the bottom.
Say, Axel, do you still want to start questions at 10:30?
Oh, yeah, I'll do that too. You have a watch? Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first ever Audience with an Astronaut. I'm Aubrey Ingmeyer. I'm a sophomore at Frederick High School.
And I'm Joss Bybee, a sophomore at Skyline High School. We're both project team managers on the Innovation Center's UAS team, members of the Mobile Lab team, and pilots on the drone performance team.
This Audience with an Astronaut is made possible through our partners with the Space Foundation. Established in 1983, the Space Foundation connects teachers and students like us with opportunities in the space industry. These opportunities go far beyond becoming an astronaut. They include careers like engineering, manufacturing, bioscience, entrepreneurship, photography, writing, and much more.
Space might seem far away, but here in St. Vrain, it's actually right here and happening now. Through classes, project teams, internships, camps, and events like this one, we're continuing to grow our space innovation opportunities. Now, we'd like to introduce our guest speaker. Please join us in welcoming Mr. Duane Digger Carey.
Mr. Carey is an aerospace veteran who, before going to space, served as mission control as a shuttle capsule communicator. He went to space to spend over 10 days flying as the pilot of the shuttle Columbia in 1999 on a mission to upgrade the Hubble Space Telescope.
He has over 4,300 hours of flight time in more than 35 different aircraft and has received numerous awards, including the Distinguished Flying Cross and 3 Air Medals. Without further ado, please welcome Mr. Carey.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Wow, what a setup you guys have, and I'm so happy to be here this morning. Good morning to everybody from the St. Vrain School District. Good morning to Madam Superintendent. And kids, when the superintendent shows up, that means that this is important stuff, okay? People care about you, people care about your future, and we're gonna expose you guys to some really interesting, I hope some fascinating ideas this morning and some things maybe you haven't thought about. Space Foundation team, scattered about here, came roaring up from Colorado Springs this morning, unafraid of the snow, unafraid of the ice, but that's just what Colorado does, right? So Space Foundation, thanks for making this possible. I was talking to the superintendent, sounds like pretty good partnership that y'all have got started here. And these kids, with what they do here, are bringing a lot of the same skills that industry, as you guys know, industry is crying out for right now. You know, this whole space revolution that's about to be unveiled, it's going to be a job-creating monster, and you guys can be part of this. Next slide. So, high school. I think we're all high schoolers here. I think we're being piped into some other schools, but I'm going to concentrate on y'all. High school, if you haven't already, high school is the time to start thinking big thoughts. Let's talk real quick before we get into the space thing. Let's talk real quick about humanity's history on our planet. Now, for us, our species of human started about 300,000 years ago, and it started in the continent of Africa. As a matter of fact, 300,000 years is a long time, so maybe we need kind of a graphic demonstration that'll show us the passage of time. So we do have a volunteer here. Miss Willow, we're going to refer to you as the human timeline. And your job is to stand facing this way and stick your arms out like this with your pointer finger sticking out. Ladies and gentlemen, from this fingertip to this fingertip, this is the human timeline. This starts 300,000 years ago, and at the tip of this finger is Star Wars, Star Trek world, okay? 300,000 years ago, okay, you can rest this arm, I know this. Actually, rest both of them for now. I know that's hard. 300,000 years ago, if y'all popped into a time machine and went to the middle of Africa and started looking around 300,000 years ago, you'd go, well, those are people over there. I recognize, that dude over there looks like Uncle Frank. They were people like us 300,000 years ago. And it took mankind a long, long time. If we could stick this arm out again. It took mankind a long, long time to go through the years, right about in here, 150,000 years ago, y'all. 150,000 years ago, people were just getting enough numbers, high enough numbers, and successful enough to start to explore outside the continent of Africa. By the time we get here in the timeline, about 100,000 years ago, we were out of Africa and we were going into Europe and Asia, places like that. Right about here, about halfway up the forearm, that's when our last major competitor as a humanoid species went extinct. That's when the Neanderthals went extinct. Right here at the wrist, y'all, that's where people started inventing agriculture, growing crops so they could build cities and start to specialize in terms of education and trades and stuff like that. Now, it gets pretty complicated from here on out, so I'm going to take a quick picture. You can sit down. Let's give it up for the human timeline. Next slide, please. By the time we get to that knuckle on the pointer finger, that's when people finally made it to Colorado. Next slide. That, ladies and gentlemen, what was happening then? It's about 5,000 years ago. That's when the Great Pyramids were being built in Egypt. Next slide. What's that? What does that represent? That's us. That's where we are now. Next slide. Can you guys see how close we are to Star Trek, Star Wars world? Can you see how far we've made it and how close we are? Now, y'all are kind of an in-between age right now. Some people refer to you as Gen Z or the Zoomers, and some people refer to some of you guys as the Alphas, Generation Alpha. But I refer to you as Generation Space, because you guys, it's happening. You are the ones. This is happening. This is for you. The space future is for you. We are getting close to making it happen. You can either sit back and watch history unfold, or you can make history. Now, there's a lot of kids sitting there, maybe not as many as some schools we go to, but there's some kids sitting there they're going, wait a minute, Digger, this whole space thing, isn't that just for the smart kids? Or isn't that just for the kids that are rich and famous? That's not for me. You know, I'm just a regular old, I struggle in school. Sometimes I get to school late. I'm not one of those kids that's going to be involved in the space revolution, because that's not for me. Every kid here has a story. All of your beautiful faces, you all have a story. Would you all allow me a few minutes to share my story with you? Every kid has a story. This is mine. Next slide. Star Wars, Star Trek world is coming. It's just about here. Next slide. For me, it started out rather modestly. My mom got pregnant with me when she was in 8th grade, and I popped out when she was 16 years old, and she got kicked out of school. She was 16, my dad was 17, out on their own, no money. They were so poor that I slept in a drawer. Next slide. Didn't take my dad long to get cold feet and leave my mom all alone with an 8th grade education, living in the housing projects in St. Paul, Minnesota. 3 kids, 8th grade education, single parent. Things are looking pretty bleak. My mom was undergoing some hard times, but she knew she needed to do something, so she went to hairdressing school and learned how to be a beautician. She went to a school to get skills. This is taken probably around 1966 in the McDonough housing projects in St. Paul, Minnesota. Projects, we all know the housing projects is where the poor people live. Next slide. So my mom was working 12-hour days to support us, and we were being taken care of by babysitters, and that meant that little old Digger, the oldest of those 3 kids, could pretty much get away with what I wanted to get away with. And I decided I didn't like school. We didn't have kindergarten back in them days. Well, we did, except it was you had to pay for it. And we didn't have any money, so I never went to kindergarten. But you can see in my first 2 grades, I was either late for or missed school totally about 60 times. Did I mention that we grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota? And I know winters get cold at times. Miss Cheryl and I have been living in Colorado for 20 years. We know that y'all have winter, and it gets cold sometimes. But it's not winter like Minnesota winter, okay? And a kid that would rather hang out in the woods all day than being a nice warm school with the free lunches and stuff like that. That's dedication, right? That's a kid that doesn't like school. Next slide. Well, y'all, when I was a rising 5th grader, my mom hit the lottery and she married a guy that had a full-time job. My stepdad, my mom are still alive. My stepdad was a lithographer. He operated a printing press. This guy's 26 years old. He marries into a family with 3 rambunctious kids, decides to buy a house. He did what all working class people do. When he needed more money, he worked extra shifts. So he worked 12-hour night shifts. I didn't see him much in those days. Next slide. But we were living in a house. We weren't in the projects anymore. We were living in a house. So you would think that things would get better school-wise, right? Not quite. I don't know if they still grade you guys in conduct, but back then they did. Let's think of some traits that astronauts probably should have. Do you think astronauts should be adept at producing neat and accurate work? That's probably pretty important when you're on a spaceship. I was graded non-satisfactories across the board. How about an astronaut's ability to effectively make use of time and materials? Pretty important thing when you're an astronaut, right? Straight non-satisfactories across the board. But Madam Superintendent and teachers in the audience, it's really, you guys know, it's really strange the things you're proud of as you get older. If you look at the line that says respect for rights and property of others, y'all, I got in a lot of fights. I didn't start any of them. I didn't win many of them, but I was never a bully, okay? Back in them days, I reserved all my venom for my teachers. Next slide. Middle school. Obviously, for someone that's going to end up wearing the electric suit, middle school is when you turn things around, right? Yeah, turn things around. Middle school is when I hit my stride. I was failing, really doing poorly in math and science classes. Why is that? It's because I was positive I was never going to use that stuff. Whoever uses that stuff, that's when I messed around, that's when I got my sleep. You can see I failed math, failed science. As a matter of fact, in 9th grade, I failed 9th grade and had to go to summer school. And for a kid that doesn't like school, it's like probably to this day, perhaps the most horrible experience of my life, having to go to summer school. So far we're not looking real astronautish, are we? Next slide. One thing that sometimes I think it kind of saved my life was my stepdad was a motorcycle guy. And I decided I liked motorcycles. And when I was in high school, when I was where you guys are now, I was working 40 hours a week at a restaurant so I could buy a motorcycle and gas and oil and stuff like that. And I can see the wheels turning. I can see the wheels turning up here, and you guys are thinking, well, Digger, if you're in high school and you're working 40 hours a week, when did you get your sleep? Obviously, it was during those math and science classes. I'm never going to use that stuff. Next slide. 6 weeks after graduating from high school, I took that money I had saved up in the restaurant, bought a motorcycle, bought some camping gear, blasted off to see North America. 18 years old and not real bright. I didn't have much of a plan. Didn't take me long to run out of money. So what I did was I put the motorcycle back in my folks' garage and I hitchhiked. We don't hitchhike anymore. That's something we used to do back in the 70s. I don't even know how safe it would be nowadays. I hitchhike and I jump freight trains to get to Southern California. Freight trains, a moving freight train is something I don't want any kid to attempt. There's 99 ways to get killed and there's one way to do it right. But when you're a po kid growing up in the projects, that's how you got around town. You jumped on freight trains. It's a skill that I had. Not very proud of it, but I could do it. Next slide. Ended up in Southern California. No money, hardly any education, no plan. Ladies and gentlemen, adults in the audience, can anybody think of a job that had less future prospects in the 70s than typewriter repair? That's what I did in Southern California. Did that for close to a year. Next slide. Came back to Minnesota, and I decided, just as my poor little mother had done all those years ago, I needed to go to school to get a skill. You kids here are too young to experience this. Some of your parents know about this. Some of your teachers know about this. When you're on what I call the minimum wage treadmill, you can't get ahead. You can't get off of it. Southern California, living in a cruddy apartment, no car, no motorcycle, no bicycle, just day to day, just earning barely enough to pay the rent and keep food in the fridge. That's no way to live. It took me about a year to figure that out, and I went to the Minnesota School of Bartending to learn a skill, the skill of bartending. And it took me off that minimum wage, bottom of the ladder. Life got a little bit better. To this day, no kidding, if you went down to my basement and seen all the space pictures and all the accomplishments we have down there, this ranks right up there. It's on the wall. I was proud of it then, and I'm proud of it now. Next slide. Oh, Miss Cheryl just gave me the secret signal. She said, Digger, you're behind schedule again. So how about we just skip? You guys didn't come here to hear bartending stories, right? You came here to hear stories about flying in space, right? So why don't we just skip ahead 6 years to the cool stuff? Should we do that? Fun stuff. Next slide. 6 years after that diploma, I'm flying an Air Force, United States Air Force primary trainer jet. In that picture there, that's me, and I'm trying to learn how to fly formation flight, which is really, really hard, but it's really, really fun. Next slide. Then the Air Force put us in a T-38, put me in a T-38 supersonic. Got a chance to fly a supersonic jet training. That was cool. Next slide. This is what I wanted to fly when I grew up. I wanted to fly the A-10. So I did that for about 5.5 years. Miss Cheryl and I served in Louisiana and South Korea. Back when South Korea was a third world country, it was a lot of fun. Next slide. I'm not here to recruit for the military, but you kids that are thinking of the military and you have a short attention span like I do, the military is cool because you get to do a whole bunch of different things, but you don't lose your seniority every time you jump into a new career field. So the Air Force gave me a chance to fly F-16s, and we shipped our family off to Spain for 3 years. Next slide. Like I say, the Air Force gives you a lot of different opportunities, and they gave me an opportunity to go to test pilot school. And I like flying jets, so being a test pilot sounded really cool because you get to fly all different kinds of airplanes, and you get to do things in jets that no one's ever done before. Sometimes it's scary, but it's always interesting. It's never boring. This picture was taken while I was in test pilot school. We went on a worldwide tour, and we flew jets from all different air forces. Some of you aviation buffs might recognize this as a Saab Draken. It's a Swedish interceptor capable of Mach 2.2. 2.0. I was really looking forward to flying this thing up there in Sweden. So I jumped in there and tried to start it up, and I broke it, and I never got a chance to fly it, but I think it's a cool picture, so I leave it in there, okay? Next slide. Tested F-16s out at Edwards Air Force Base for about 3.5 years, and you can't really see it there, but I'm standing there in my flight suit on the flight line, and I'm soaking wet. It's because it's an Air Force tradition when you fly your last mission at a duty station before you go on to the next one. They call it your finny flight, and all your buds come out and spray you down with a hose when you're done flying. So why am I done flying F-16s? Next slide. It's because Houston called and asked me to come fly this, which to you guys is an ancient spaceship, but to me, the space shuttle is about the fastest, coolest flying machine that there ever was. And I couldn't believe I was going to get an opportunity to fly this thing. Next slide. Took the family down to Houston, went from dry and hot in the Mojave Desert to humid and hot down in Houston. 2 years of astronaut training, another 1.5 years supporting my friends who were flying in space, and then I was given the opportunity to be the pilot on a Hubble Space Telescope mission. This is a really cool shot of the Hubble Space Telescope. It's an awesome, these days I guess you could say iconic telescope that's in outer space, about the size of a school bus, weighs 25,000 pounds, and I was asked to be the pilot on Space Shuttle Columbia to refurbish this guy and get it up to date. Next slide. Now, y'all, let me grab my high fidelity, multi-million-dollar spaceship mock-up. Hubble Space Telescope missions were actually quite simple when you think about it, okay? You blast off, you find the telescope. When you find it, you grab the telescope with the robot arm that's mounted in the payload bay of the space shuttle. You put the telescope in the back of your payload bay, and then we send our spacewalkers out on 5 consecutive days for spacewalks to put new equipment, take old stuff out and put new equipment inside the telescope. When we were done, we lift it with the robot arm and we leave it in space and we fly this guy home like an airplane. Spaceships in them days had wings. That's why NASA hired test pilots to fly these guys, because they needed people that were used to flying all different kinds of airplanes. in airplanes that were difficult to fly. So would you guys like to see about a 15-minute long official NASA video of STS-109? Next click, please. Like everything NASA does, even the video starts with a countdown. Famous NASA meatball. This next, you know, NASA needs the space program, aviation, all that needs kids that have creative skills like drawing and art and stuff like that. Luckily, we had some astronauts that could have some design experience. They designed our patch. You just saw the commander, Scott Altman. You saw the rookie pilot. Here's a spacewalker, John Grunsfeld. Flight engineer Nancy Carey, the world's smallest astronaut, by the way. Rick Linehan was a spacewalker. Jim Newman was a spacewalker. And the other rookie spacewalker and the guy that ate most of my food in space, Mike Massimino. Here we are. You put on these launch and entry suits. It doesn't look like it. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning, out to the Astro van and get on the spaceship. Y'all, getting on the spaceship was kind of difficult because it would be like getting in your car or truck if it was standing up on its back bumper. Like everything NASA does, there's a team. You do things in teams, stuff in teams, and there's specialists to help us get strapped in to our seats. And now for the big event.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, main engine start, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Carey to broaden our view of the universe through the Hubble Space Telescope.
Roll program.
That's
Roger,
7.5
roll,
million
Columbia.
pounds of thrust. By the time we cleared the launch tower, we were already going 100 miles an hour. Go through these clouds about 10,000 feet, you're busting through the speed of sound. You're going to do that another 25 times before you get to orbit. Tons of power. I'm sure we have kids in the audience that like speed and power and stuff like that, like I always did. Y'all would enjoy this ride. 2 minutes after liftoff, solid rocket boosters came off. They splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean to be retrieved for reuse. You know, NASA needed folks that had maritime skills. You know, some of you guys like boats and maybe want to hang out where there's a beach and an ocean. The space program needs your skills. The space program needs all kinds of skills. 8.5 minutes after liftoff, you're in space, and anything that's not tied down starts floating around inside the cockpit. That's our external tank that carried our liquid fuel. It's going so fast, y'all, it came off over the Atlantic, but it floats all the way over the Indian Ocean and lands in the Pacific. Here's a cartoon depiction of the rendezvous maneuver on day number 3 of the mission. You can see the size of the telescope. The orbiter itself is about the size of a 737, so you can see how big that telescope is. Once again, doing things in teams. We're getting directions from the ground on how we have to burn our jets to get close to the, burn our rockets to get close to the satellite. Finally saw it on the 3rd day. Now, y'all, that thing is 350 miles high and it's going 18,000 miles an hour, but it looks like it stopped because our relative velocities are just about canceled out. Space rendezvous is a very complicated maneuver. We barely had enough fuel for this, so we had to get it right the first time. That's the robot arm that's Nancy's using to grapple the grapple fixture on the telescope. Nancy practiced for this maneuver for 9 months. Once again, she only had one chance to get it right because we were so low on fuel. And you know, there are some things that you do in life where you only get one chance, and the only way to prepare yourself for something like that is lots of study, and you finally learn it, and then comes the practice. And NASA does the same thing. The first 2 spacewalks, y'all, we were going to replace the solar panels on the telescope. The old ones were flimsy like foil, so we commanded them to roll up in preparation for removal. Colorado kids are generally pretty smart about solar panels. You guys know that they wear out after a while, so we're going to put some fresh ones on there. Our first team of spacewalkers, our spacewalkers worked in teams of 2, going out the airlock door. The airlock's kind of like the front porch or the back porch of the spaceship. It's how you can get in and out without losing all of your atmosphere. And then the old solar panels, this view is actually taken from helmet cams in the spacesuit. And our spacewalkers had trained, for every hour of spacewalk they did, they trained about 9 hours in this gigantic swimming pool that NASA has called the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, or the NBL. It's just a gigantic swimming pool. The training is very, very arduous. Spacewalking is a kind of an athletic feat, practice and practice. A lot of kids in the audience maybe like dancing, and they take formal dance classes and stuff like that. I've always thought that dancers would make good spacewalkers because they understand the importance of preparation for a recital. They understand how to move their bodies, and they're generally in pretty good shape. This is one of the new solar panels that we're going to replace the old one with. You notice the old solar panel, we tucked it in the back of the spaceship. You don't just throw away stuff that you're done with in space and let it float around. Like I said, it's going 18,000 miles an hour, and if you just throw it off into space, after a couple orbits, it might come around and poke a hole in your spaceship. So even little nuts and bolts, our astronauts are trained to clean up after themselves, just like you were trained when you were 5 years old to clean up after yourself. Astronauts call those kinds of things sandbox skills, and they're very important. You saw Jim handling that solar panel with just his fingertips. Y'all, this thing weighs 600 pounds, and the astronaut is controlling it with just his fingertips, moving it nice and slow. You know, that's one of the superpowers you get when you go into the microgravity environment. You can move really heavy things around. It's awesome. It's incredible, and there's nothing on Earth that can simulate this. The only way to have this experience is to be there. You can't do it with VR goggles. You can't do it with games. You can't do it online. You can't do it. You can't do it here. You have to go there to do it. There's the robot arm. This is what our satellite looked like after we put the 2 new solar panels on it. They told me I had to be like the Steven Spielberg of the whole mission, running these recording devices. You guys, this was way back in those deep, dark days when we recorded everything on tape. 40-minute long digital videotapes. A spacewalk lasts 6 to 7 hours. We had 5 recording devices. You guys do the math. I was changing tapes all the time. I knew nothing about that. They told me that I was in charge of it, and I had very little time among all my other duties to figure out what I needed to do in order to do that job. As a matter of fact, that's been the theme of my entire career from the time I set foot in Air Force pilot training. There was too much to learn, not enough time to learn it. It's like, are you guys kidding? Third spacewalk started out in a disastrous fashion. John's spacesuit sprung a leak when he was in the airlock. If it had been 10 minutes later and he was in space, he would have died within seconds. We pulled him back in. We took out the defective module and built him a new spacesuit from everybody else's spacesuit parts. And we sent him out the door because his job was to replace this power control unit in the telescope that had never been designed to be removed during the life of the telescope. There were 36 of these barrel connectors, and we were like, how in the heck are we going to get them off? You couldn't use the gloves. See that pair of pliers there? That pair of pliers was designed by a lady in Maryland who had never gone to college. She had a high school degree. She went to school to get skills, how to build tools, how to fabricate, and above everything else, how to be creative and think outside the box. Without that special pair of pliers, y'all, the Hubble Space Telescope would be a useless piece of space junk up there right now. Instead, the Hubble is up there, and it's sending down science and data so fast that the astronomers can't even keep up with it. This is a lady that did not have a college degree. About half of all kids go on and get college degrees. The other half of you guys, you're going to go to school to get skills. Both types of kids are equally valuable to the space team of the future. This here, you guys would be interested in. This is an old camera we're taking out of the telescope. I know it doesn't look like a camera. It looks more like a phone booth. But the new camera that we're putting in there, that isn't the new one. The new one that we're putting in there was built just down the street in Boulder, Colorado at Ball Aerospace. That new camera called the Advanced Camera for Surveys, here it is. This was the star of our 5 days of spacewalking. This was the big one that was going to give the telescope 10 times the power that it had before we got there. Built by Ball Aerospace, built by people that did not have college degrees, but they're the smartest people in the world at what they do. And this thing weighs 600 pounds. You know what was scary to me, though, as a guy that's been in a lot of trouble in the past? It cost $250 million. And I kept thinking, man, if we break that thing, they're going to be taking money out of my check for the rest of my life to pay for that. Astronauts digging around for some spare parts. These spacewalks, like I say, they're 6 or 7 hours long. They're arduous. You practice and practice for these things, but things always pop up. There's Scott Altman running the robot arm. You can see the robot arm was a big star of our spacewalks. American spacewalks, they normally had an astronaut on the arm, and the other one was the free floater working together as teams. All this stuff is highly choreographed. And not only that, but 1 month before we flew in space, they gave us the news that something had just broken on the telescope, and we had to figure out how to replace that with just 1 month to go before we flew in space. There was too much to learn, and there was never, ever enough time to learn it. It made me nervous beyond belief, thinking, I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't think we've had enough time to practice all this stuff. That was Jim Newman. Adults in the audience, NASA's no different than any other organization. As soon as you get your job figured out, they promote you. And Jim knew this was the last time he was ever going to fly in space, so he waved goodbye. He was a very accomplished spacewalker, and he loved it. He loved it when he was out on a spacewalk. He never complained about the broken fingernails. He never complained about the cuts on his feet. These suits beat you up pretty good. This is one of our greatest needs on the space team, our new suits. These suits that you guys are looking at were legacy suits when I flew in '02, and NASA's still using the same suits, believe it or not. Kids in the audience, kids in the live stream that know how to sew, that are good with textiles, can figure out in their minds how to design complicated things like spacewalking gloves and stuff like that. We need your skills incredibly bad on the space team. There's not a single skill and a single passion that any kid has that isn't required on the space team. Everything we need here on Earth, we're going to need in space. We're going to need all your skills. We're going to need your creativity. This particular spacewalk here, the last one, they're putting a radiator on the outside of the telescope. Oh, you know, just like you guys do, astronauts always clean up after themselves. You can see the tools in the front of the spacesuits. And that's what our beautiful, incredible telescope looked like when we were done with it. Now it gave Mike a chance to get some practice on the robot arm to grab this thing and pull it out of the back of the payload bay. I always tell people that the Space Shuttle Orbiter is a lot like a pickup truck. You have the little cab up front where the people live, and most of the spaceship was the bed of the pickup truck, the payload bay where you put stuff. So 25,000-pound satellite, moving it out of the payload bay. That's going 18,000 miles an hour, you guys, and so are we. It looks like slow motion, but we are zinging around the world 10 times faster than the muzzle velocity of a high-powered rifle round. This gave us a chance to take photographs of the underneath of the telescope. There's a bunch of scientists that are interested in space junk and what they call the space debris environment in low Earth orbit. And every little pit, every little scar on the outside of this telescope gave those guys valuable data. So that was another one of my primary jobs, was using an 800 millimeter lens, taking close-up photographs of the entire exterior of the Hubble Space Telescope. You know, as if I didn't have enough to do. We were getting 4 hours of sleep every night, you guys, because there was just too much to do, and we promised that we would do it. You know, there's no choice. You just do it. Mission cost $750 million. You're not going to go up there and chill out. We were all working real hard and all sweaty and dirty, so we started to get cleaned up to come back for the perilous journey back to Earth. Nobody likes a dirty, smelly astronaut, so we started getting cleaned up. It gave us a chance to get some exercise. This is an exercise bicycle machine, but NASA complicates everything. They call it a cycle ergometer. And you guys, you know, quite frankly, my biggest surprise about flying in outer space was exercise. If exercise felt as good on Earth as it does in space, we'd all be Olympic athletes. I can't figure that one out. There's Mike eating more of my food. Did you know that Mike was one of only 2 astronauts in the history of manned space that actually gained weight during a space mission? And Miss Cheryl was pretty mad because I came back and I'd lost 14 pounds, and I didn't have 14 pounds to lose. That was over 10 days. Astronauts take pictures of the Earth. We take pictures of sunrises and sunsets. We love to argue with the flat earthers. That's a lot of fun. We've seen it with our own eyes. You guys get some beautiful sunrises and sunsets in Longmont, but in space you get to see 16 of them a day. There's Nancy blasting backwards. We had just fired our rockets so we could slow down and enter the Earth's atmosphere. And one of the first things that happened as we entered the atmosphere is Digger freaked out. You know why? Y'all, that's the overhead window of the spaceship. Those are lightning bolts blasting off the tail of the spaceship out into space. And I go, you guys, what's that? Because it was my first mission. They said, don't worry, Digger. It's all this static electricity and plasma that's being formed by, because we're going so fast. Perfectly normal, happens every time. We landed in the middle of the night, and that was a view out the front of the spaceship. This is infrared imagery, y'all. Anything that's white is hot. Anything that's dark is cold. Now, this spaceship was a glider, a 220,000-pound glider with stubby wings, didn't fly real good. We hadn't had fuel for half of a revolution around the Earth, and we get one chance to make this landing. Do you think myself and Commander Altman might have practiced this just a few times before we flew in space? We not only practiced it over 100 times, we practiced it over 1,000 times. And this was Commander Altman's first opportunity to actually land the space shuttle, and he landed it perfectly. Now, I was in charge of making this movie, but my commander, Commander Altman, he's a Navy guy, and he was so proud of his landing, he said, Digger, I want you to show my landing like several times on the movie. With all that practice, and if you get it wrong, you ball up a multi-billion-dollar spaceship and you kill yourself and 6 of your friends, you might want to practice this a little bit before you actually fly. This is our ground speed. We're almost stopped. 40 minutes before this, we were going 26 times the speed of sound over Australia. These are the superlatives that become everyday experience in the space world. See these guys? These are the suits. This is like Madam Superintendent. You want to see them happy, okay? I was glad that they were smiling when we got off the spaceship. Look at Nancy. She's the world's smallest, and she's standing this next shot. Look, she's standing next to Scooter, and he's the world's largest, y'all. We had him on the same mission. Nancy hates this particular shot. She says, Scooter, why did you have to stand next to me? It makes her look like a dot. But you know what? We had Nancy on our mission because she was the world's finest robot arm operator, and we had to have that. We had to have her skill. Do we have any robotics kids in the audience? Everywhere Miss Cheryl and I go, all over the world, to visit industry, we say, what are you guys looking for in the kids coming out of the K through 12? Robotics always comes up, doesn't it, Cheryl? We just hit the Q&A part. Is it, whoever's running the show here, can I take an extra 5 minutes before we get to Q&A? Is that cool? Great, because I got some important stuff to talk about. Next slide. You guys can see that a lot can go wrong on these missions, right? Next slide. But if your job was to work on a telescope and that thing starts sending down pictures like this, back in those days, they gave us a reward. Next slide. There was cake. Next slide. Miss Cheryl, and with the graciousness of, is it Miss Lynn running the show here? She gave me an extra 5 minutes. I think some of you guys might be curious. We switched right from the bartending school diploma, and we went to flying an Air Force jet. Are there any kids here wondering what happened during the mystery 6 years of Digger's life? First thing that happened, next slide. I'm tending bar one night, it's late, I'm tired, I've been on my feet for 2 shifts, run into a customer who had been a fighter pilot in the Vietnam War. And he starts talking about flying F-4s as I was feeding him drinks. And I was going, by this time, y'all, I'm starting to grow up a little bit. I think a lot of the problems I had was immaturity. I was starting to grow up a little bit. And I started thinking about things I could do to support myself and a family and not end up back in the projects. Fighter pilot. I go to this guy, I go, that sounds really fun. I'm a motorcycle guy. I've raced a few times. I think I would make a great fighter pilot. And he goes, bartender, you don't understand. In order to be a fighter pilot, you have to have a 4-year college degree. And to some kids in the audience, that does not sound impossible, but to me, that was impossible because I was not prepared for that. And right then, I felt the despair. I felt the disappointment of a door that had been closed, mistakes that I had made that would separate me from what I thought would be the coolest thing in the world. Every kid here is going to experience some type of inspiration if you haven't already. It's going to happen for y'all within the next 10 years. We're going to give you a secret of things that you can do right here in school to prepare yourself to answer the call when that inspiration and opportunity hits. I said when, because it will. Next slide. There is one little detail I left out about 10th grade. History class of all things. Like usual, I'm working 40 hours a week. I'm behind and I'm studying for a history test, 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm reading about this Spanish conquistador, Hernan Cortez. This guy was a mayor in Cuba, pretty successful, but he wanted to get rich. And you know what his plan was? His plan was to build some ships, get together a crew, build some ships, and go across the Gulf of Mexico, over to Mexico, and steal gold from the Aztec Indians. That was his plan to get rich. Sounds pretty cool. They went over there. Turns out the Aztec Indians were pretty good fighters. Turns out that these guys were running low on food. They were running low on water. Cortez's crew comes up there in Mexico. They're like, dude, this isn't working out. We want to go back to Cuba. We miss our families and all that. To heck with you. We're going back tomorrow. You know what Cortez did that night? He went down to the beach, next slide, and he burned up their ships. And them guys woke up and they were so happy, and they went down to the beach and all they saw was ashes. And I'm reading this as a little 10th grader. I'm reading this and I'm going, wait a second. I have a lot of friends that are taking the kind of classes in high school that will enable them to get into college. And what happens, I don't like school, but what happens if I change my mind? My ships will have been burnt. Those guys on the beach had no future. Their future was dictated by one mean guy, okay? They were under his control. I did not want to be a slave for the rest of my life. So what I did in school was I took a language class because that was required to get into college, and I started working harder in math class because I was really bad at it, and there was a certain level of math you needed. Next slide. Oh, by the way, that F4 I showed you guys, about 15 years after that night at the bar, I was flying F4s out at Edwards Air Force Base in test pilot school, and that jet was every bit as cool as I thought it would be. Next slide. Another very important thing that would happen was I met Miss Cheryl. I was growing up. I was turning into a young man. Miss Cheryl and I fell in love. She had expectations of me. I had expectations of her. I knew I didn't want to end up back in the projects. I came home that night after working at the bar, and I told Miss Cheryl, I go, wow, fighter pilot, this guy was telling me. She says, that sounds pretty cool. She's always been adventurous. And I go, but it could never happen for me because you have to go to college and all that. And you know what Cheryl said back in those days? She said, well, why don't you try? Next slide. So there it was, late July. School started in early September at the University of Minnesota, and I rolled my little old motorcycle down to the campus. Y'all, and the teachers are going to think this is funny. I literally started knocking on doors. And the only secretaries that would talk to me were at the engineering school. So I signed up for engineering school. Next slide. And they told me I had to take these tests, ACT. And I couldn't pass the test. And you needed a 24 to get into engineering school, but my little brother, who's like way smarter than me, was still in high school, and he taught me how to solve a system of 2 equations and 2 unknowns. And with that, I went and took the test, and I got a 24, the absolute minimum you needed to get into engineering school. Next slide. Along the way, I signed up at Air Force ROTC because I wanted to fly jets. Next slide. Teachers in the audience, you know exactly what comes next. I get to engineering school, and I crash and burn. It just turns out that math is one of those things you can't leapfrog and fake it till you make it. It doesn't work that way with math. Math is a stair-step approach. And if you don't have those bottom stairs, you can't get to the upper. I didn't know any of that stuff. You know what I did during Christmas break at the University of Minnesota? With my tail between my legs, I went back to my high school, and I checked out a stack of math books from the library. And all I did for 3 weeks, I was living on my own then, all I did for 3 weeks was 10 bar, eat, sleep, and study math. I had to learn geometry, I had to learn trigonometry, all that stuff you need to know in order to pass the calculus classes. Now you would think that Digger's going to say, and then after that I was getting straight A's in math. No, but I was passing my math classes, and it allowed me to get that bachelor degree of engineering, which opened up a whole world of opportunities. Next slide. Along the way, I decided I needed to go to grad school in order to qualify to be a test pilot. I was starting to put together some plans. And that's when the math light bulb, can you imagine being in engineering grad school and never understanding the math until you get to grad school? And when the light bulb came on, I finally understood it. It's not about the math. It's not supposed to turn us all into mathematicians. It's the struggle to learn the math that does other things to your brain, and it opens up those learning circuits. And then all the cool stuff you want to do in life, if you want to be a dancer, if you want to be a musician or artist. Some kids are going to be engineers. Some kids are going to build telescopes. They're going to build satellites up at Ball Aerospace. Whatever it is that you think is cool, the struggle of learning math will give you power. Okay? It gives you learning power. Remember I said in that movie there was never enough time to learn that stuff? You know what happens in pilot training to somebody that can't learn fast enough? They'd make great pilots, but the Air Force doesn't want to take the time, so they kick them out. Okay? Give yourself the power to learn new things and learn them quickly. The kids that are the most unfortunate are the kids that are good at math and they don't have to work very hard at it. For you guys, you need to find some hard math. I know this is little kid stuff, but I want you guys to repeat after me one thing. The power comes from the struggle. Let's hear it. I learned this the hard way, so y'all don't have to, okay? The power comes from the struggle. This is what industry is looking for. This is what undergrad programs at college are looking for. Kids with grit. Kids with some humility. Kids that have worked hard, failed, gotten back in there, tried again. This is what we're after. Next slide. Have I convinced those of you that thought maybe this whole space thing wasn't for you? Did my story maybe change your mind a little bit? It's for everybody. You guys are Generation Space. This is for you. This is yours. You can either sit back and watch history unfold, or you can make history. And I don't care if you're a creative, if you're a dancer, a musician, an artist, novelist, TikToker. If you think this isn't for you, there's going to be another cool brand of influencers on the moon. I call them moon tubers. Okay? We're going back there to live, y'all, and we're going to Mars to live. We need all those skills. Next slide. Next, there we go. So this is you, Generation Space. You are here. Next slide. Thank you. I went about 7 minutes over. I'm sorry. I've been briefed that we have some pre-approved questions. I don't know how this is supposed to work, but any pre-approved questions, I'm ready to answer. And for the hard ones, thank goodness Space Foundation is here. They can answer the hard questions. I'll answer the easy ones. Because y'all are the space geeks.
Hello. My name is Connor Chatterton, and I am a freshman at Erie High. And I was wondering if it's weird coming back to Earth and adjusting to gravity.
Is it weird coming back to Earth and adjust to gravity? And the answer is yes. And Miss Cheryl, if you could just share real quick your observations and your tyranny when I came back. You can grab that mic maybe.
I have a mom's voice, so I think I'll be okay. So one of the things when he came back, NASA had informed all the spouses that, number one, they need to take their car keys away. Number two, for him, I had to take his motorcycle keys away. I had to lock up his bicycle. He was not allowed to run that type of machinery, or because of balance issues, he was not allowed to ride his bicycle. He would drop things in the house as if it would float to us. It was quite an adjustment. I think one thing he can show you is what it's like when you're at work at NASA and you run into somebody who's been in space recently because of the dizziness issue.
Oh, I remember being a brand new astronaut and you're up there, you know, at NASA and everything. and you're walking behind someone in the hall, and it's all astronauts out there, and I was thinking, I wonder if, I don't know this astronaut, but I wonder if she has just come back from space, and you could always tell, because a normal astronaut would be walking down the hallway, and then, you know, come to a corner and just keep going. But if the astronaut I was following had just come back from space, this is how she did it. She'd be walking along all happy. Then when she got to the corner, she went like this. Let's continue to walk. Because your ears are still working the way they're supposed to, but your brain doesn't trust your ears yet, because your brain was trusting your ears during those first few days in space, and it was causing a lot of nausea and throwing up. About half of all astronauts that go to space throw up at some point. It's that confusion thing. So your brain learns to just cut off those signals. But then you have to rebuild that trust after you land. Questions?
I'm Elijah Garcia from Iowa High, and my question to you is, what is the most miraculous thing you've ever seen from space?
What is the most miraculous thing I ever saw in space? I get that question so many times, and most kids would guess. You know, I'm in space. Obviously, I'm going to look out into space. I'm going to look at the moon, and I'm going to look at the planets and stuff like that. That's not the way it works. Matter of fact, I have a friend that spent an entire year on the space station, and with every spare moment he had, when he looked out the windows, he's looking at your planet, planet Earth. Why? You can't get tired of it. And all those pictures you guys have seen and all the videos, that's like 1% of how cool it really looks, because your eye can pick up so many more details. I dream of a future. If you guys haven't already noticed, Digger's kind of a weirdo. I dream of a future. We probably have some kids here that are being raised in the Islamic faith. Islamic kids know that at some point in your life you're expected to do a pilgrimage over at Mecca. I dream of a future where every person who's born on Earth at some point is expected to do a pilgrimage in low Earth orbit for at least 2 weeks, and it will rock your world. It'll turn the Earth into such of a better place because of the perspective. I'm a different person than I was when I was strapped into that spaceship to blast off. You guys that are interested in it, look it up. It's called the overview effect, and it happens to most of us. Now, there's a lot of kids there. We're talking about the space team. I would like to remind you guys that just because you're interested in the space team doesn't mean you have to be crazy enough to strap on a rocket and go to space. That stuff is scary. That's not for everybody. The most lucrative and the most important space jobs on the space team are going to be right here on Earth, and you guys are blessed to be living in Longmont, because you don't even have to leave home and be part of the space team. The jobs are right here, and they're important jobs, really important jobs. Not only that, Space Foundation informs me that the average space-related job pays almost twice as much as other jobs do. How do we get there? We work double hard at math. All your subjects are important. Work double hard at math and give your brain the ability to learn new things and learn them quickly. That's the #1 skill. Questions?
Hi, my name is Vicenza, and I'm a freshman at NIWA, and my question is, did you ever have a moment of regret?
Did I ever have a moment of regret? I've had lots of regrets, and you know, that's normal. I think regrets make us stronger, because sometimes when you're younger and maybe even in your 20s and stuff like that, you might think you've had a lot of experiences, and but you really haven't, and your regrets seem to take a large part of your thoughts and stuff like that. But when you get older, I just had a birthday, y'all, 69 years old. When you get older, there's so many various regrets that you just learn that there's nothing I can do about that. Regrets are very important, though. We can learn from them. And you go, man, I wish I hadn't have done that. That was a horrible experience. But now you are one leg up on a person that's never had that bad experience, because we know what you're going to do next time. The kid that hasn't had that bad experience, they're probably going to make the same mistake you did. I'm not saying go out there and make tons of mistakes, but we're all going to make mistakes, and what the space team is looking for is for kids that can make mistakes and get up and dust themselves off and get right back into the fight. That's what they call grit. Grit, no one can really define it, but you know when a kid has it, okay? You know when a kid has it. The way I was raised, Poe Kid in the projects, those kids all have grit. They're survivors. They have to. But it was hard for me because I had a long way to go in order to be able to compete. But regrets, yeah, lots of regrets. I'm not going to go into any of them because I don't even know where to start. But thanks for the question.
Hello, Mr. Carey.
Oh,
Thank you for visiting.
thank you.
My name is Valencia, and I'm a senior at Niwot High School. And my question for you is, would you ever live on the moon or another planet if you had the chance? And do you think we will ever be able to live on a celestial body if we had the chance?
Thanks for that question.
Thank you.
Would I like to go to the moon or another planet if I had the chance? And will we ever land on another celestial body?
Would you ever want to live on?
The last part of it?
Would you? Oh, the last part of the question? Sorry.
Yeah, land on a celestial body.
Do you think we will ever, humans will ever live on a celestial body other than Earth?
Live on a celestial body other than Earth. Okay, great question. The first part of the question, would I like to go to the moon? Y'all, I had the honor of meeting several moonwalkers. I met Neil Armstrong, and I worked with John Young, who was a moonwalker on Apollo 16 back in the early 70s. And, you know, in my day, we flew space shuttles, and the astronauts would tell the rookies like me, you know, it's really cool being in space. The whole floating around thing is really cool. But then old John Young would come up and he'd say, you know what, that floating around stuff is not nearly as fun as being on the moon with 1/6 gravity. You know, we might have a kid here, a big kid that weighs 180 pounds. You'd only feel like you weighed 30 pounds if you were on the moon. Most kids here, if they were on the moon, might be able to jump. Some kids might be able to jump as high as the ceiling. I'm not quite sure. You're still going to hit the ground pretty hard, but everything's different. And the 1/6 G sounds like a lot of fun, so I would love to be able to do that. Do I think we'll ever live on other celestial bodies? NASA has just announced that the new rollout program for the Artemis exploration program. And what that involves, Artemis 4, the fourth mission, astronauts are going to walk on the moon. And then, ma'am, we're going back to stay. And what that means is we're building colonies. And at first it's going to be like a space station stint. Maybe someone will live on the moon for 4 months or 6 months or maybe even a year or something like that. But the reason we're going to the moon is so we can practice our skills to go to Mars. Mars is a lot easier place than the moon with one caveat. Mars is really, 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 really far away. And those people that are living on Mars are going to be pretty much on their own. So we have tons of skills.
We have 2 questions left, and we have 2 minutes before the buses leave.
Lightning
so
round.
you've gotta be able to-
Lightning round.
Hello, Mr. Carey. My name is Apollo Johnson. I'm a junior at Silver Creek High School.
What a cool name.
Thank you. My question relates to the first question you were asked today. What is it like day by day living in a no-gravity environment for a period of time?
What is it like day by day living in a zero gravity environment? For me, I was on an 11-day space mission. Anybody here might have a little brother or sister that's 2 or 3 years old. They're learning everything all at once, including how to walk, how to eat, how to sleep, how to go to the bathroom. Those are all the skills an astronaut has to learn when you're in space for the first time, and it is overwhelming. It gives me real respect for 2-year-olds. Questions?
Hi, Mr. Carey. My name is Axel Zamora. I'm a 10th grader at Niwot High School, and my question to you is, what is the most incredible part of your journey?
What is the most incredible part of my journey? Professionally, personally, that's a whole other thing. We got a couple kids we're real proud of. I think the most remarkable thing is my story is a story of perseverance. You know, not someone who's blessed with talent, not someone who's blessed with a lot of intelligence and stuff like that. But man, after what I'd been through, I could share with you guys what happened to me during those 2 years on the road on a motorcycle. I put myself in bad positions, like near-death type stuff. And I learned that if you give up, that means you die, okay? So I never gave up. And I've been lucky enough to have a very adventurous, inspirational partner over the years that when I did fail, she always said, well, just try again. And I'd be like, do you know what that means? That's a whole bunch of work to try again. And those were her expectations. So I think the most amazing thing is just someone that didn't have any natural advantages, but just found something and just never gave up. And that's something that anybody here is capable of. Thanks for that
Thank you.
question. So y'all have been a great audience, great facility. Give it up for the folks that made this possible, you guys. Turn it over to the bosses. Thank you very much. Go forth and conquer, y'all. This is for you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carey. We have a couple of gifts that we'd like to give you.
Cool. Thank you.
And an Innovation Center award.
Yes.
And we want a picture real quick.
That's awesome. Here, I'll tell you what. Let's go like this, and we're going to hold this guy, and we're going to shake hands in front of it. That's the way it's done. Thank you. Thanks for the good help. Thanks for the coffee this morning.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Can we all give Mr. Carey another round of applause?
Okay, our students that need to go back to the bus, please do so. And our students who are staying here, please stay seated until your instructor tells you, tells you to get up.